So we're on the Mishnah on 118b, about halfway down. That's a good start. Ein lochim min haroim tzemer v'chalav v'gedolim. You can't buy wool, milk, or young goats from shepherds because you suspect they're not selling their own stuff. They're selling from the flock that they're paid to guard, to watch. Lo mishamar peros eitzim u'peros. Lo mishamar peros eitzim u'peros. So you can't buy from orchard guards. You can't buy wood or fruit. The same reason. But you can buy from women these items in the various locations that they're popular, that they're common, without the idea that you're not suspecting that they're selling their husband's property without his permission, like they're basically embezzling. You don't suspect that. It's fine because these are common things to sell, and and there isn't a concern. Excuse me. There isn't a concern about theft here. Any of these cases, if the sale is conducted or you're urged to keep it secret, then you can't buy because then there's clearly something fishy going on, and it probably is stolen goods. Locally based in the case of eggs and chickens, you can buy anywhere, and presumably because these are not expensive items, and it's not worth someone to sell for a few pennies to sell stolen goods. The rabbis taught, you can't buy any of these things from shepherds, goats, wool that's plucked from the sheep. But you can buy a finished garment from them. That we can assume belongs to them. We don't assume that they've sheared the sheep, made the wool, sewn the garments. No, we don't assume that. We assume, but also it's not a question only of assumption. I'm sorry, it's also the fact that if he did so, then he's still a thief, but he's acquired the thing for himself. Now he can sell it to you. Like you're not purchasing a stolen property anymore. This isn't something that still belongs to the original owner. Sure, the shepherd is liable to pay the original owner for the wool that he stole, but having made it into a garment, he's changed it to a sufficient extent that it actually belongs to the shepherd now, and so you're permitted to buy it from him. So there's a distinction between buying stolen goods and buying manufactured goods made from stolen material. Or you can buy milk and cheese in the desert, but not in the settled area. Presumably in the desert. It's like you're assuming that the 1 second. That the owner has, like, this is something goes bad, right? If you milk your goats in the desert, what are you going to do with the milk? It belongs to the owner, but if you wait until you get back to the settled area to where you can give it to the owner, it will be spoiled. So we presume that the owner has permitted the shepherd to consume the milk, and then he can sell it as well. Looking in Arba Chamesh, you can buy 4 or 5 sheep, Arba Chamesh Gizon, 4 or 5 fleeces of the sheep, but not 2. Because if you sell that many of the owner's stuff, then the owner's going to notice. 1 or 2 could go missing. The owner won't notice, but if it's a significant number, if he's selling his own stuff, not the owner's stuff. We don't flock, the domestic animals. Midario saying nothing, but if they're grazing in the wilderness, animals we can't buy from them. Again, it's the question of, is the owner going to notice? If it's local, then the owner will notice if things go missing. If you're out in the desert for weeks at a time with the sheep, owner's not, or even if the owner comes and looks, they're not in a collected place, they're not in a corral, they're in the open, so it's hard to tell if something is missing. So you might dare to sell some that are not yours, and therefore we forbid buying it. The rule is if the owner will notice that it's missing, and you can buy that ein margish bo, but if it's something that's the owner could easily overlook that it's missing egg yolk. Don't buy it because you have to be concerned that it might be stolen. Amar, we said before, we said you can buy 4 or 5. That's enough to be noticeable. So why do you say 4 or 5? So if you can buy 4, you can certainly buy 5. Um, Arba Mitel Chamisha means 4 out of 5. It means 80%. If you're buying 80%, somebody's going to notice, right? If the guy who's been stealing 80%, someone's going to notice, which seems a little much, right? I mean, you probably notice 50% too, right? So 4 out of 5 doesn't seem like a great answer to me, but here's another version. Because some answer as follows: it's a percentage thing, right? If you have a large flock, maybe won't notice 4, but you'll notice 5. If you have a smaller flock, then you'll even notice 4 are missing. This isn't so satisfactory either, because like how large, right? If it's 4 out of 100 or 4 out of 1,000, makes a difference, right? So unclear. These aren't particularly satisfying to me, but that's where the Gemara ends up. And now I have another question. I'll go. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand or say something.
Nobody talking there. No sound.
How about now? Anything?
Well, now it's better.
Now
Okay.
it's better.
Sorry, I seem to have lost my signal there for a minute. Don't know what happened. I apologize.
Yeah, I thought it was at my end.
No, maybe it was general. I don't know. Anyway, good. So we're saying the Bryce has said, 4 or 5 is noticeable. 2 missing is not noticeable. What about 3? Right? Uh, on one hand, you imply that 3 is on the is
Can't
not.
hear him.
So
Can't hear.
More answers. Hababar Yasa Bekrishusa.
Can't hear.
It's very choppy, coming in and out.
Can't hear anything.
All right, I'm gonna try and change locations, so bear with me for a minute.
Can't hear anything.
I just heard that.
Okay, can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
Seem to have a much stronger signal. I apologize. Um, Here, let me just set up the camera again.
Much better now.
Good. Yeah, I seem to have a much stronger signal here. All right. So, did you get the problem with what if there are three sheets? Like by
No.
saying 4 or 5 is noticeable implies 3 is not noticeable. Saying 2 is not noticeable, that implies that 3 is noticeable. So what's the deal? So we make a distinction between healthy sheep and sick sheep, right? Healthy sheep, the owner is very interested. He's keeping a close eye on things because they're more valuable. So then he would even notice that 3 are missing. But sickly sheep, the owner doesn't care so much about them because they're not so valuable. So he might not notice 3, but he'll notice 4 or 5. I mean, the numbers are, I think what makes sense here to me is the principle, right? What is considered noticeable under what circumstances? But you'd still think that it matters if there's what the percentage is. Like I said, 3 out of 100 is different than 3 out of 1,000, but the Gemara doesn't discuss that. Rabbi Noah Baisos Lochem and Midbar saying Lochem. So we said that you can buy domestic sheep from the shepherds, but not wilderness ones, because again, it's not so easy to notice if they're missing them, and he might be selling the stolen stuff. So they asked, Rabbi Huda Reisha Chayil L'chumra, or Dilma Sefer Chayil L'chula, is he saying you can't? Is he talking about the beginning or the end of the mission, the 4 or 5 or the 2? So Reisha Chayil L'chumra, you could be saying talking about the first part of the mission. Yamar Lochim Yan Abba Chamishat Son. When can you buy 4 or 5 if they're domestic? But in the desert, where it's not so noticeable, even 4 or 5 you can't buy from them because it might be stolen. Maybe he's commenting on the end of the mission. You can't buy 2. Honey Midbarios, maybe he's saying that only applies to in the desert of all by us. But if they're domestic, then you can buy 2 because that many missing would be noticeable with domestic sheep. Tashma, so we try to prove it the Tanya. But we know we're looking by us as we have being looking in Midbarios. Here in this price, everybody he was being more specific, like that he's clearly talking about the cases of 2. he says specifically in case of 4 or 5, you can always buy. Shmamina Sefer Karela Kula. Okay, Shmamina, that's a good proof. Lomi Shomer Peros. You can't buy. Mishnah said you can't buy fruits or wood from orchard watchers. Rava Zavin Shabishta Me'arisa. Rava was buying bundles of grapevines from a sharecropper. You can't buy grapevines from an orchard watcher. Wouldn't the same be true for a sharecropper? That's if the watchman, the orchard watchman, he has no equity, has no ownership in the item, right? So definitely don't buy from him. But a sharecropper owns a share of the land. You can buy a mummy must mean you could say, okay, some of this produce actually belongs to him. That's probably what he's selling me. There's no reason to suspect he's selling from the owner's side. Why, if we're already suspecting people of selling stolen goods, I'm not sure why this would be the case, but that's what Rava's theory was. Tanarabah. You can buy from orchard watchers. That's when they're sitting out in the open and they're selling. They've got a little stand there by the orchard, 5 cents for lemonade. And there's the lemons in front of them, and there's the scale to measure the lemonade, whatever it is you're selling, the coolant shop. So that's okay, because he's setting himself up in public as a seller of this stuff. If it were not his, the owner would hear about it and would protest. But if if the local police is walking by and suddenly the seller becomes all reticent and says hide this stuff, don't let anybody see, then he's clearly selling stolen goods. And also you can buy, from the entrance to the orchard, but not in a corner in the back, because again, that is surreptitious and it's likely to be illegal, a stolen property. Itmar, from what point can you buy from someone who's dealing with stolen goods? Or Rav Amar should tell you Rov Mishalom. If most of the stuff that he's making available for sale belongs to him, in other words, he's stolen it, but he's already taken possession, as we saw in the Mishnah. Even if only a minority part has been taken possession by him, then you can buy it. You can assume you're buying the stuff that now belongs to him. Again, this doesn't let the thief off the hook for compensating the owner if he's caught, but it allows you to buy it and not be considered stolen property anymore. Rav Yehuda ruled for Ada, who was like a shamus of the rabbis. He said it's okay for you to buy if the minority, even if just a minority of the goods offered for sale actually now belong to the thief. Mammon Masar, what about selling the property of an informer? So somebody who was accused and convicted of what we saw yesterday, that you're giving away information about property of somebody else to those who would confiscate it, like, for example, the authorities. So can you so Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, what are they arguing about? You can destroy that person's property actively. And the other says that you can't. Why could you directly destroy it? The punishment, what we do with these informers are we physically punish them. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that you kind of put them in jail, right? You put them into a pit and let them die there, right? So if you're gonna, forfeit someone's life, you can certainly forfeit his property. Monday or Asalam, no, but one that says no, you can't destroy his property. Okay, so this guy is a wicked person, and he deserves to have his property destroyed, but he may have an estate, right? He may have children who inherit him who are not necessarily wicked like he is. So destroying the property will ultimately deny its benefit to the heirs, and therefore you can't do it. And the verse says, Yachin Rasha B'Tzadi Gilbash. Rasha prepares something, and the tzaddik will benefit from it, will wear it. So same idea that the Rasha is the one who is informing, but he has children who might be tzaddikim, and they get the benefit of his wicked deeds or of his property. Rochiza had a sharecropper. He would weigh the produce and give to Rochiza, and weigh the produce and give to himself. Notice he would be very meticulous about it. It's a little hard to understand what the case is here. What I like best of what I saw is the Maharsha, who says that he would weigh with different measures. He would cheat Rav Chizda by weighing out for him with one set of weights and weighing out for himself with another set of weights. As we'll see, Rav Chizda fires him. Rav Chizda fired Kara Nafshe, and he said about himself, sorry?
Okay, that's called a televa in the Torah.
That's correct. Kara Nafshe and Rav Chizda says, why did I fire him? But Sofim L'Tzadik Chel Chote. The end of the verse that we just quoted is the tzaddik. It's hidden for the tzaddik the wealth of the sinner, right? So in other words, he referred to the sharecropper as a sinner, and he felt good about firing him and essentially depriving him of his share. And then going off on a bit of a tangent, this verse in Mishlei says, "What is the hope of a chanef, of a flatterer, for what he does, for what he steals? Because God will cast away his soul." So what does that mean? Whose soul is being cast away? One says the soul that's being cast away is the one of the victim. And the other says, one says of the perpetrator. What do you mean that God will cast away the soul of the victim? What did the victim do? But no, it's taken as follows. It's written that these are the ways of a thief. He takes away the soul of its owner. So God intervening and kind of removing the soul from the robber and giving it back to the victim. But the one who interprets the first verse as God will cast away the soul of the thief. Another verse says, "Don't rob a poor person, and don't oppress the poor." God will fight for them and rob the soul of those who rob them. So in this case, it's the interpretation matches this pasuk, which is God will cast away the soul of the robber. So, but like, how do you? So now we're going to say, well, why does each side not accept the other? It does say that God will take away the soul of the owner of the victim, right? So how do we explain that? If you think that it refers to the soul of the robber, all of the hashta, the current owner, right? You're taking away the soul of the property's current owner, which is the robber, since he's already stolen it. Vidach nami. What about the other way? Doesn't it say God will extract the soul of those who are the perpetrators? Matam Kamma. So you say, no, it's really referring to the victim's soul, but the reason that God is saving is casting away or taking back, as it were, the victim's soul is because of the deeds of kovehem, of the perpetrator. Okay, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Kol hagozel es chavero shava pruta kilu noten l'shmas mined. If you steal even a penny from somebody, it's like you're killing. And Amar ken archos kol botzeh betzas nefesh v'elad yikach. Any thief, it's like stealing. V'yomer v'yachal kesircha v'lachmecha yachlu banecha v'nosecha. They'll consume your what you harvest and your bread, your sons and your daughters. V'yomer, and it says mechamas b'nei Yehuda asher shafchu dam naki b'artzam. Because of the crimes of the people of Yehuda that spilled the blood of the innocent, and it's referring to theft. And the Omer, another verse, El Shol v'El Beis Hadamim Asher Al Asher Hemis Asad Givonim, because of King Shaul and the house of blood for having killed the people from Givon. And he didn't actually, as the Gemara will explain, he didn't actually kill them. He didn't kill the Givonim. It's referring to the case where he killed the Kohanim of Nov. But guess what? By killing the Kohanim of Nov, he deprived their employees, the Givonim, of their livelihood. So by referring to Shaul as having killed the Givonim, he didn't actually kill the Givonim. He caused them, he did kill. He killed the Kohanim of Nov, which is bad enough, but he also killed figuratively those who were relying on them for their livelihood. My v'yomer. So why we have these like 4 different verses? Why wouldn't the first one stop? Because if you could say that it's only the soul of the victim that the robber is taking away when he robs. But not his family, right? So then you have the verse about the banav ubnosim, but sons and daughters. Kashma, okay. That might be only where you take where you like really rob somebody. You take something that belongs to them and don't give them any money for it. What if you're like underpaying them? They'll say, here, you have to sell me this thing for 10% of its value, and you force them to do that. So maybe that's not as bad as total theft. Maybe that isn't comparable to murder. Tashma. So we have another verse. So that verse is referring to Hamas, which is which the Gemara understands that Hamas is not outright theft, but this idea of not paying their full price, forcing a sale at a low price. Maybe it only applies to doing it directly, but not indirectly. So then we have the thing of Shaul, who deprived the Givonim of their livelihood indirectly by killing their employees. So it's still just the depriving of them of their livelihood is enough to consider him as if he had killed them. No, you're speaking my mazon because of kilu as we said. Okay, the Mishnah had said you can buy these things from women without, you don't have to suspect that they're stealing from their husbands and keeping the money from themselves. You can buy wool in Yehuda and linen in Galil, where apparently it was the practice. This is what the things that were cut into thieves of these. So you can't buy wine oil with flour. It apparently wasn't common for women to be selling these things. These are things that the men would take to market. So if a woman is selling them, it's suspected that she's doing it on the sly. Let me know, because you can't purchase things from slaves or from children. Again, we're assuming that these are unauthorized goods. He's going to put a limit on this, right? A woman can sell 4 or 5 dinars worth of things. In other words, where she would make enough money to buy herself a headscarf. But in any case, if they're doing it surreptitiously, or they're saying, "Oh, here come the cops, hide everything," then usher. Then clearly there's something fishy going on. You can't buy that. Now, what if you're a tzedakah collector, right? Can you accept a donation from a woman who's selling these things, or do you have to assume it's stolen? So you can accept a small thing, not something that's more substantial. Because we assume that the husbands will allow them to give a few coins to the poor, but not to make a substantial donation without their authorization. And what about people who have olive presses? You can buy from their wives a lot of olives and a lot of oil. Here you can't buy small amounts because we're assuming that the women are the proper agents to sell, wholesale, but not retail. If they're selling retail, it means they're siphoning off on the side and selling it for their pocketing their money. There's different customs in different places. In the Upper Galil, you can buy small amounts of olives. So probably not on both. We call Pesach. So because this is a woman's job, like a man isn't going to, embarrass himself by selling, very small containers of oil, right? He's supposed to be a big businessman. He's supposed to be selling barrels of oil. So selling, small quantities is not good for his image. So this he would give to his wife to do. And so then it's okay to buy this. Ravina Ikon Leve Mechuza. Ravina got to Mechuza, a place. Asu Nashe Deve Mechuza, Ramu Kame, Kavle V'Shire. So people trying to sell him stuff, chains, bracelets. Kavu Min Island, bought them. Amale Rava Tosefta Tosfa Ravina. Rava Tosfa said to Ravina, Tanya, but don't we have a brisa? The bite stuck on the Kavu in the end. The tzedakah collectors can accept small things but not large things. Yeah, these chains, this jewelry is considered a small thing because there was a lot of money rolling around in the Mechoza. So yes, these are actually considered small things in that situation. Okay, next Mishnah, last Mishnah of Bava Kamma. So this is going to get very technical in terms of how you weave things and what tools are used and so on. I'm going to confess I'm not really all that up on the process of weaving. I don't think we really have to understand it in depth to get through it, but let's see what we can do. Mochin Shakobes Mosi Harei Shalom. So basically what we're talking about is byproducts of the process. So you bring apparently in producing a woolen garment, there is a thing at the end of the process where you have to wash it and stretch it, okay? And then when you stretch it, it finishes the garment in some way, but you also have to comb it to give it a proper appearance. And when you comb it, threads are going to come off. So these threads that the washer of the garment. Now, I don't think we're talking about regular laundering. It seems like we're talking about the process of manufacturing the garment in the first place. So when you're soaking the garment, and part of that process, there are pieces of wool that come off, hairs come off of it. The worker can keep those. Sorik motzi harei l'shel ba'arais, and when you comb it, then the owner gets to keep the threads that come off in the combing. So there's this process where when the garment is being manufactured, there's some extra threads left at the edge so that there will be something to stretch it with and to finish the process with, but these are not integral to the garment. These are understood to be that they're going to come off in the end. And so we can assume that they don't really belong to the owner of the garment or the guy that you're doing the work for, rather that these are forfeited, they're understood to be forfeited to the worker. So ko is not shlosha chutin and shlo. So if there's 3 threads in this, then the launderer can take them. Yasmer can array bias, but if there's more, if you take out more threads than that, then he's taking from the actual garment, and that belongs to the owner. If it was black on white, no tilsa kol v'hein shelo. You can take off all the black threads and they belong to you, because obviously if you have a white garment, you don't want flecks of black in there. If it's supposed to be pure white, then it's understood that the finishing process will remove all the black threads. The owner presumably doesn't want the black threads; he wants a white garment. So the worker can keep the white threads, the black threads. The tailor leaves over enough thread for sewing. Again, this is some kind of finishing of the garment. Or if he removes a piece of cloth from the material to finish the garment, and it's at least 3 by 3 finger widths, these belong to our eligible bias. These belong to the owner of the garment. Masha hacharash motzi b'matzad, in finishing a wood item, if you're removing a matzah is apparently an adze, and it's can take very fine shavings off of wood when you're trying to finish a shape. So those shavings belong to the worker, but if you're using an axe, shall balbais, whatever the wood comes off with an axe, that's presumably more significant amount of wood, that belongs to the owner of the wood. But if you're working on the premises of the owner of the item, anything, any byproduct, even sawdust belongs to the owner, because the fact that he's having you work in his place means that he's not giving up on the ownership of any of these byproducts. The rabbi taught, you can buy these wool threads because they belong to the worker. You can buy from him. And the worker can take off the upper 2 threads, and they belong to him. But you can't do more than 3 stitches in the loop that attaches the garment to the frame that stretches it at the end to finish it. Now you have the shasiva erev of weaving, right? You have the warp and the weave and the weft. And so here's where we get kind of technical in terms of what's the essential piece here. Like if you're, as you tighten, in one case, as you tighten the smaller threads to bring the big threads together, the smaller threads become not that important, right? Because you don't see those in the garment, since you're pulling together the heavier threads with them, then they obscure the view of the smaller threads, and it also makes a difference if you're doing it, I would say, like vertically or horizontally, in terms of which way the following the warp or following the weft. So here the Gemara says, or the Brisa says, you can't comb the garment on the warp. You have to do it on the weft, the horizontal direction. And that will whatever that produces in terms of things coming off is fine, but you have to do it the right way. And you kind of smooth out the garment on the length of a lower achva, but not the width. But if you want to even out by cutting off pieces up to a tefach, you can do so. In other words, that's not considered removing things from the garment. That's just trimming the garment, and you can keep the byproduct. Amar, but we said shnei chutim v'natan shalosh. Now we have a contradiction. Before we said 2 threads, now we're saying 3 threads. It depends if we're talking about heavy threads or what's the opposite of heavy threads? Not light threads, but very, if they're very thin, then you need 3 to become significant. If they're heavier, then 2 are significant. Well, Yisrael Gabega Lushisiol Arba. Brisa said you can't comb it along the warp, but you have to do it along the web. You probably have another Brisa that says the opposite. Makasha Habaglima Habasarbala. It depends what kind of garment you're making. Some garments you need to comb them one way, some garments you need to comb them the other. Okay, again, kind of technical here. I don't claim to understand the different types of garments or under what circumstances you're supposed to do it one way and not the other way. But the point is that there's a proper way to do things. If you're doing it improperly, then and you benefit from it, you gain from it in terms of things coming off the garment. You can't keep this. You can't sew more than 3 stitches. So again, you're sewing the garment to a frame so that you can stretch it. You can't use a very heavy, strong connection. Only a connection of 3 stitches, 3 threads, 3 stitches. So by Rabbi Yirmiyah, or you may ask, I'm telling you what do you mean by a stitch? Like in and out, or just in? Maybe in and out is 2 stitches. Take it, Quran doesn't know. You can even it out, smooth it out on its length and on its width. You probably have another brisa that says the opposite. Again, it depends what kind of garment. In some cases, it's the proper way is to smooth it out one way, and the other kinds of garments to smooth it out the other way. The rabbis taught you can't buy these pieces of wool from the comber because they're not his. But if the local custom is that he gets to keep that stuff locally, of course you can buy from him. In any case, you can always buy like a whole pillow filled with these shreds, or a mattress filled with shreds by Tama. Why? As we saw in the Mishnah. If he's changed its form to such an extent, you had little threads, but now you have a whole pillow, so you've still stolen it, but you've changed the item to such an extent that it now actually belongs to you. So again, you're still liable for stealing, but the property is not is saleable and not considered stolen goods anymore. We don't buy from a weaver or irim or nirim or punkla or shiure. These are all kind of tools or byproducts of the process. You can buy from them these other kinds of garments, these other kinds of threads or spun threads, woven cloth. Amrei, they said hashtatovo shakle. So this is obvious. If you can buy spun threads, already buy it. So a complete woven cloth, really you can buy. My Ari TK. So actually, we're not talking about woven cloth. We're talking about these kind of woolen chains that are woven from unspun wool, but they're not finished garments. So there's still parts of, still kind of unfinished goods. You can't buy from someone who dyes wool. Lo osos, testing pieces, samples, lo dugmos, or your other kinds of color samples, lo slushim shel semer, or torn off pieces of the wool. But you can buy complete garments like dyed. If they're selling you a whole shirt, it's already dyed, that you can buy. Again, because it's a finished product, it's changed from the original stolen items. But now the grass hashatavo shakel, you're saying you can buy spun threads, but other than buy it, certainly you can buy finished clothing. It's certainly finished. My begadim namte. So again, similar to what we just said, we're not talking about actual clothes. When we say begadim, we mean namte are felt garments made from unspun fibers. So you haven't really transformed them as much, but the Bryce is telling you that it's enough of a transformation that it is transformed into a saleable item. If you give hides to a tanner, the trimmings of the hide, the torn off wool that from the hide, when you take a hide, you have to take off the hairs, right, before you turn it into leather. So those things that come off belong to the owner. The whole wool that comes out of the rinse, like there's a process where you soak the leather, the skin, that when that wool belongs to the worker. Okay. That appears to be just like, how much is there? There's only a small amount that comes off, then the owner of the hide is mochel on that. He's like, he doesn't care about that. But larger amounts come off, the patches of hair, useful for something, I have no idea what, then the owner would want to keep. And so the worker can't have it. Amar Yuda, Katsra Shmei, Katsra Shak, sorry, we said Imaya Shachar. So this person was called a katsra, right? We said kitsuing, the trimmings of the hide. So katsra shmei v'katsra shakile. This kind of work is called a katsra, and he can take for himself what like it's a play on words basically. What he makes katsar, when he shortens the hairs by taking out the hairs, that belongs to him, and he's called a katsra. Amar Yudah Hakol Olin Luminatches. Everything counts, like when you're measuring the minimum size of a garment so that it needs tzitzis, it's called stylus here, like you count everything, even the threads that will eventually come off. So if you have a garment that's such a size that once you remove a measure of it as part of the finishing process, it's no longer big enough to require tzitzis. So it still requires tzitzis because you measure by the unfinished product. The Yitzchak Bari copied Alayu. And my son Yitzchak is very particular about taking out these threads before putting the tzitzis on. I'm not sure what he's getting at here. Yeah, it's a little unclear what he's telling about his son Yitzchak. I don't really know the answer to this. Achai shashir esachut. Mishnah said if the tailor leaves over some thread, belongs to the owner of a Kamma leaves part. How much is enough thread to sew with? Enough thread to be long enough, as long as the needle, and a little bit beyond. They ask, does he mean that like how much is left over? Another full needle length? In other words, he's saying 2 lengths of the needle, that's the minimum for the size of the thread. Or Dilma, or just like a tiny bit bigger than a needle. Tashma, let's prove it. Tanya, another brisa says a tailor who leaves over thread which is too little to sew something else. Leftover cloth that's less than 3 by 3 finger widths. And when the owner is particular about it, then the owner wants to keep it, he gets to keep it. If the owner doesn't care, then the worker can take it. Now, if you want to say that it means 2 needles lengths, it is because less than this amount is still enough. Like 1.5 needles length is still enough to be useful. But if you say enough thread to sew with means 1 needle length and a tiny bit more, if it's not even the needle's length, then it's not, what can you do with it? Right? It's not useful for anything. It needs 2 needles length. That's the minimum. That's what we. Masha Harash, whatever the carpenter takes off with this tool, like shavings, he can keep. But if he's chopping it off with an axe, then that wood that he chops off still belongs to the owner. Raminu, last question. Masha Harash mostly b'matzad another brisa puts them together. Whatever the worker takes off either with just shavings or with a saw or chunks. It says both of them belong to the owner. But sawdust that comes out from under a drill, or under a plane, or sawdust that that when you're sawing with the saw, you lose some sawdust. These belong to the worker. So this contradicts our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says that the shavings with this tool, the ads or whatever it is, belong to to the worker. This Brisa says no, they belong to the owner. Rava ba'asra the Tana be done. It's a local custom where in the local custom of the Tana of our Mishnah, ika tarte chatzine. There's two kinds of tools. Rabasi karle kashil, zutrasi kai matzad. They have different words for these things. Chadu diika, asra the Tanabara, but in the Brisa, chadu diika, there's only one kind of tool. The karle matzad, they're both called the matzad. So that's how you can reconcile. They're talking about two different tools. They still have the same understanding of small bits of byproduct belong to the worker, but what tool produces them was different in different places. Okay, at the end of the Mishnah, if he was working on the premises of the owner, then everything, all the byproducts, even sawdust, still belongs to the owner. People who are chiseling stones, there's like no concern about theft, because whatever comes off the stone, they can keep. Mefaske ilanos, people who are pruning trees, mefagse gafanim, or grapevines, menakfe hige, or bushes, menakshe zraim, or they're pruning, like weeding out weeds from vegetables growing in a wheat field or something, where you're removing useful stuff because you want to promote the main crop. Va'odre yirakos, or you're pruning vegetables, because much of all by if the owner cares about this byproduct, the things that are being pruned, then that would be stolen property if you keep it. And all but if the owner doesn't care, then you, the worker, get to keep it. Okay, so we'll stop here in case we have plans of Ve'osim. We'll leave this last little bit. And thank you for bearing with me for the extra time, but we finished Bava Kamma almost, and tomorrow we will begin with Bava Mitzvah. Everybody have a good day.
Not finishing it? Not finishing?
I think is it not our custom to leave that for the Siyum?
Where's the Siyum?
I don't know I don't know if we're planning one.
There's actually a CM at 11 a.m. that Rabbi Lopatin is participating in. That's My Jewish Learning. Hadron is having a CM.
Okay, well, if we're not
planning
planning our own, planning our own, then we might as well finish up. Yes. Anybody who doesn't want to finish, please drop off. I'm Rabbi Yehuda says, Kishus v'chaziz en behem mishum gaza. These are Kishus's hops, and gaziz is a green grain. In other words, it's kind of green. It's not yet fully ripe. En behem mishum gaza, those aren't subject to theft. Ba'asra dekapte yesh behem mishum gaza. But if it's a place where people care about these things, they want to keep them, then this stuff. Ravina, Masamachasya, Asra the Kaptehu. By the way, Masamachasya is a place where the owners do care about these things. So don't steal them. Hanla, Hagozel Basra is the end of this parak, Masalikala, Masachos Bava Kamma, and the end of Bava Kamma. And as I say, tomorrow we'll begin with Bava Mitzvah. Have a good day, everybody.
Yashar about all that stuff about clothing. Apparently, according to Bernard Lewis's accounting of the Ottoman Empire archives, there was a big textile industry in the Sfat area in the 16th century, largely run by Jews, doing manufacture at least of cloth and of also of dyeing, which I would guess would be mostly indigo. So Jews have been dealing with clothing for quite some while, continuously. And it wasn't that everybody in Sfat was just studying mysticism. They were actually engaging in business.
Well, if you go to the spot now, you'll see just as many artists as mystics.
Right,
Although there's
right.
probably an overlap. There are probably a lot of artists who are also mystics.
Yeah. Yashikar.
Anyway, all these people, I'm sure, understood this Gemara 100 times better than I ever will.
Right. Some of those great rabbis in spot probably
Yeah, we're probably
probably
artisans. Sure.
yeah,
Sure, they knew what they were talking about.
yeah, the idea of not working had not really taken into effect there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they didn't have a welfare state to rely on. Okay. Have a
all
good day,
that-
everybody.